There are many notable rejections throughout history. The Beatles were famously rejected by Decca Records. J.K. Rowling was rejected by over a dozen publishers. And when Connie Booth and John Cleese wrote their Fawlty Towers pilot script, an editor at the BBC sent a memo to the head of comedy saying it's full of cliches and that he can't see it being anything other than a disaster.
You bastard!
Not only was the show a hit, it has achieved legendary status around the world and is the measuring stick when it comes to British sitcoms, maybe even sitcoms in general. The premise is quite simple. Husband and wife, Basil and Sybil Fawlty, own and run a small hotel in the English coastal town of Torquay.
Depression is a very bad thing. It's like a virus. If you don't stamp on it, it spreads throughout the mind, and then one day you wake up in the morning and you can't face life anymore.
And then you open a hotel.
Working alongside them is Polly, the waitress/housekeeper,
You bastard!
and Manuel, the waiter, who's from Barcelona.
I am from Barcelona.
The show revolves around their attempts to run the hotel amidst the ridiculous situations and guests they encounter. And Basil is the key, as he's constantly struggling to raise the tone of the hotel. Or, as he says,
So we've got to try and attract a better class of person.
only 12 episodes were ever made, but the show boasts 3 BAFTAs, a 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes, and is as popular as ever, more than 50 years after its debut. But what makes it so funny? Let's dig a little deeper. Basil Fawlty.
Basil! 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 Basil!
Gloriously played by John Cleese, and based on a hotel owner he met in real life. He is a miserable, rude, obnoxious snob.
My God, you're ugly, aren't you?
So throwing him into the world of customer service is a perfect recipe for disaster.
Thank you very much.
Because comedy is about creating conflict. Things not going according to plan, and then seeing how our characters deal with it. And Basil is front and center for all the chaos. So, how would you sum up his character?
You're either crawling all over them, licking their boots, or spitting poison at them like some Benzodrine puff adder.
Prone to violent outbursts and nervous breakdowns, he always cracks under pressure as his actions become more and more desperate. Watching someone stay cool and calm under pressure would be incredibly boring. But seeing someone fall apart, and more importantly, fall apart because of their own foolish choices, is what separates comedy from drama. Sybil Fawlty is the real authority in Fawlty Towers. As much as Basil likes to think he is, it's Sybil who is in charge. Having an authority figure serves a key purpose in sitcoms, as they are someone to keep secrets from, someone to be afraid of, and force our protagonist into making mistakes. Think of Deborah in Everybody Loves Raymond, Lois from Malcolm in the Middle, Uncle Phil in The Fresh Prince, all the way back to Colonel Hall in Sergeant Bilko. The character of Sybil serves the exact same purpose. Polly. I'll be honest, she's not particularly funny and doesn't have that many memorable moments. But she does serve an important purpose, as she's the only normal one in the circus.
I'll ruin you. You'll never waitress in Torquay again.
Waitress! That's a joke! I help out at reception, I clean the rooms, I deal with the tradesmen, I mend the switchboard, I change the fuses, and if you think my duties now include impersonating members of your family, you have got one more screw loose than I thought.
She's good at her job, is the voice of sanity, and represents the audience's viewpoint. Basically, she's one of us. And last but not least, we have Manuel. Where's he from?
I am from Barcelona.
The fall guy, the lovable loser. Manuel's character is used to demonstrate Basil's lack of sensitivity and tolerance, and to help carry out his ill-conceived ideas. Polly's too smart, and Sybil's too scary. That leaves poor old Manuel, the Stan Laurel to his Oliver Hardy, the Baldrick to his Blackadder, the Gareth Keenan to his David Brent. But the genius of Fawlty Towers is, whatever schemes Manuel finds himself manipulated into being part of, it's only Basil that suffers the consequences. Manuel is, and remains, innocent. The true star of the show are the scripts. They ease you into a false sense of security, then through intricate plots, misunderstandings, and coincidences, the drama escalates and escalates into a final crescendo of chaos.
The thing I'm really proud of in it is that it hasn't got slow, because usually when you see sitcoms made 10 or 15 or even 20 years ago, they may be charming and amusing, but the pace usually seems terribly slow.
Everything builds towards a breaking point. Just when you think things can't get any worse, they do. And the sheer rate of jokes is phenomenal.
Fawlty Towers has got an incredible amount of laughs in any episode, probably the most of any sitcom ever. In communication problems, I've counted that there are about 250 laughs. That goes from anything from a very small smile to a huge belly laugh, but it means that in, say, 25 minutes you would have 10 jokes a minute. So that's an incredible amount of comic intensity.
Everyone is aware of the old Seinfeld edict, no hugging, no learning. But Fawlty Towers was doing this 20 years earlier. Our characters, specifically Basil, show little to no sentimentality, never learn their lesson, and never show any personal growth. In many ways, it's the first anti-sitcom. Going back to the scripts, let's look at the episode Communication Problems from episode 1, series 2. In the very first scene, we encounter Mrs. Richards, who we see is very self-centered and very demanding.
Yes, Mr. Thurston.
What? Thank you. I was wondering if you
I
could help
need change for this.
In a moment, I'm dealing with this gentleman.
But I have a taxi driver waiting. Surely this gentleman wouldn't mind if you just gave me change.
Do you?
No, go ahead.
Another bit of information we get is that Basil likes to gamble on horse racing, but he keeps this a secret from his wife. Remember what I said earlier about authority figures? Right now, Basil is being set up with 2 of them. So how do we start making trouble? How do we make things go from bad to worse? Well, we find out that the very self-centered and very demanding Mrs. Richards also has a hearing problem.
Don't think me rude, but may I ask, do you by any chance have a hearing aid?
A what?
A hearing aid!
Yes, I do have a hearing aid.
Would you like me to get it mended?
Will Basil show sympathy? Nope. One of the many reasons he causes so much trouble. Basil decides to bet on the horse, using Manuel's help. Meaning, he now needs to keep this a secret from Sybil.
You know nothing about the horse.
Even a novice will tell you that in comedy, secrets can never be kept. And asking someone with a poor grasp of the English language to help you do this is a recipe for disaster. How do you make the very self-centered, very demanding, hearing aid-wearing Mrs. Richards even more antagonizing? Make her believe she had some money stolen from her.
I've just been up to my room. £85 has been taken from my bag.
So now we're cranking up the tension. Lots of things are happening all at once, and the pace is beginning to pick up. The perfect time for things to escalate. Basil can't let Sybil find out he was gambling, but at the same time, he can't let her think the cash from his winnings belongs to Mrs. Richards. So what does Basil do to try and preserve his secret? He asks the forgetful Major to look after the money instead. Another bad idea. This now becomes the 4th problem, which quickly becomes the 5th problem. As when Basil tries to get it back from him, the Major can't remember anything about it. Meanwhile, Manuel was instructed to say he knows nothing.
I know nothing.
Now let's escalate things again by having the Major finally remember, but only in time for Sybil to see them, and give all of Basil's winnings to Mrs. Richards in the belief this was her stolen money.
The subplots would run parallel for a time, and then hopefully they would become intertwined.
As we head towards the finale, we find out that Mrs. Richards lost her money whilst out shopping, and some delivery men arrive to return it. Basil takes the money, seemingly a winner for once. But he then smashes the vase belonging to Mrs. Richards, meaning he has to pay for it, and thus lose the money once more.
You did give me that money.
You won it on that horse!
That cost £75.
And we end on another problem. If we look at the final score, for a 30-minute show, our characters faced at least 6 different problems, all intertwined and connected, escalating one after another. That's an incredible amount of storytelling. When you think about all the great characters in sitcom history, from Seinfeld to Curb, from Larry Sanders to The Office, from Alan Partridge to Blackadder, they all have their roots in Basil Fawlty. He wasn't the nice guy, the role model, the father figure. He didn't play nice. In fact, if we ever met him in real life, we'd hate him. But somehow, we still root for him. He was the first sitcom anti-hero, and his legacy just keeps growing.